She didn't lose her savings all at once. That's not how it works. She lost it slowly, in pieces, each one feeling completely reasonable at the time, each one with a story attached. A good story, the kind you believe because you want to, the kind that feels like love. By the time she understood what had happened, 74,000 was gone. And the man she thought she knew, the man she had talked to every single day for nearly 8 months, had never been real. This is her story, and if parts of it sound familiar, that is not an accident. Margaret had a routine. She was 61 years old, recently retired from 32 years as an office administrator at a mid-sized accounting firm in Columbus, Ohio. She had a small house paid off, a pension of $1,840 a month, a savings account with $74,500 in it, money she had put away carefully, $200 at a time for most of her adult life. She called it her cushion, the thing that meant she would never have to ask anyone for anything. Her daughter lived in Portland. Her son lived in Dallas. They called on Sundays sometimes. They had their own lives. She had understood that. Her husband had passed 3 years earlier. Cardiac event. Very fast, the doctor said, as if that were a comfort. She wasn't depressed. She wants that to be clear, looking back. She wasn't desperate. She was simply quiet. The house was quiet. Her evenings were quiet. She watched cooking shows and read library books and walked 2 miles every morning around the neighborhood. She had a neighbor named Carol who came over for coffee on Thursdays. She was fine. She just didn't have anyone to tell things to at the end of the day. Small things. What she'd made for dinner. A funny thing she'd seen on her walk. She didn't have anyone who was waiting to hear from her. That was the part she hadn't quite figured out yet. In March, her daughter set up a Facebook account for her. So you can see photos of the grandkids, she said. It was easy enough. Margaret figured out the basics quickly. She started following a few pages about gardening and local weather. And one afternoon, in a comment section on a recipe post, she noticed someone had replied to her comment. His name was Daniel Osai. He said he had made the same soup, and asked if she used fresh thyme or dried. She replied, dried, but she'd been thinking about trying fresh. He said that was the right instinct. That was it. That was the first message. He was, according to his profile, 64 years old, a civil engineer, originally from Ghana. He said, but he had lived in the United States for decades, currently working on a long-term infrastructure contract in Aberdeen, Scotland, widowed, one adult son who lived in Canada. His profile photo showed a tall man with graying temples and kind eyes, smiling in front of what looked like a job site. They talked about soup for a while, then about cooking in general. Then he asked if she gardened, because her earlier comment had mentioned tomatoes. She told him about her garden. She was quite proud of it. He said he missed having a garden, that living out of hotels for work had made him feel unrooted. That word stayed with her, unrooted. Within 2 weeks, they had moved from Facebook comments to Facebook Messenger. The conversations were longer now. He asked about her life in Columbus. She told him about her routine, her children, the house. He told her about Aberdeen, the cold, the gray skies, the loneliness of being far from home. He was a good writer, careful sentences. He asked real questions and remembered her answers. When she mentioned that her late husband had loved baseball, Daniel asked 2 weeks later how she felt when she watched a game now. Was it still a comfort? Or did it feel like absence? Nobody had asked her something like that in a long time. She found herself opening Messenger before she made her coffee in the morning, just to check. By May, they were talking every day, sometimes twice a day. He had started calling her Maggie, which was what her husband had called her. She had told him that once, offhandedly, and he had remembered. He told her things about himself too, about growing up in Accra, about his wife, who had died of cancer 11 years ago, about how his work kept him busy enough that he didn't have to think too hard about being alone, about how that strategy had worked, more or less, until recently. Until he met her, he said. He hadn't expected that. She told herself not to be foolish. She told herself she was a grown woman who knew better. She told herself that feelings like this, at her age, were just loneliness speaking. But she kept talking to him. Every day. He said, one evening in late May, "I think about you more than I should." She read it 3 times before she put the phone down. In June, he asked if they could video call. She said yes, immediately, and then spent the rest of the afternoon being nervous about it. The call was brief. His connection, he'd explained, was poor at the job site. He kept freezing. She could see him, or someone, for about 40 seconds before the call dropped. He looked like his photo. He waved. He smiled. She felt something unlock in her chest. He apologized for the connection. He said he hoped she wasn't disappointed. She said no, of course not. He said, "You made me feel alive again." She didn't know what to say to that, so she just laughed a little. And now, looking back, she knows exactly when it started. Not the recipe comment, not the first messenger conversation, not even when he said he thought about her more than he should. It was the video call, the 40 seconds she could see him. That was the moment her internal alarm system went quiet. Because she had seen him, she had waved at someone who waved back. What she didn't know, what she couldn't have known, standing in her kitchen that June afternoon, was that the 40 seconds she had seen were a recording. A clip of a real man, someone living his own life somewhere, whose face had been harvested from the internet, played on a loop, just long enough to feel real, just long enough to answer a question she hadn't even known she was asking. After the call, she told her neighbor Carol that she'd met someone nice online. Carol said, "Isn't that sweet?" She kept talking to him, every day. In July, the tone shifted, not dramatically, just slightly. He seemed more tired in his messages, more worn down. He mentioned a few times that the project was behind schedule, that his client was difficult, that the stress was getting to him. She noticed. She asked about it. He said he didn't want to burden her with his problems. She said she wasn't a stranger anymore. She said he could tell her. He said that was one of the things he admired most about her. Her warmth. He said, "I want to see you in real life. I keep thinking about it." And then he told her about the problem. There had been a banking complication. He needed to access funds tied to the project, but his U.S. bank account had been frozen due to some kind of international compliance issue. Something routine, he said, but it had happened at the worst possible time. He was due to pay a local subcontractor. The amount wasn't large, $1,200. If he didn't pay by Friday, there would be penalties. There might be delays. The whole project could be affected. He wasn't asking her, he said. He wanted to be clear about that. He was just explaining his situation. But if she was in a position to help, just temporarily as a loan, and he would pay her back as soon as the compliance issue was resolved, which could be any day now, he would be extraordinarily grateful. He said he had never asked anyone for anything like this. It felt strange even saying it. She sat with it for a day. She had $74,500 in savings. She had no mortgage. She had a pension. $1,200 was not going to change her life. She told herself, "This is what you do for someone you care about. This is what trust looks like in practice. Anyone can say kind words. This is different." She sent $1,200 via wire transfer to an account number he sent her. He thanked her in a way that made her feel generous and trusted. He said it meant the world. He said he would pay her back in 10 days. 10 days passed. He said the compliance issue was taking longer than expected. He was so sorry. He was humiliated. He asked her to be patient. She said she wasn't worried about the money. Here is the thing no one talks about when they discuss scams like this. The second transfer is never about money. Not really. He asked her in early August for $4,800. There had been an emergency on the job site. A piece of equipment had been damaged. The replacement cost had to be covered immediately or the entire contract would be voided. He would lose everything he'd spent 3 years building. She hesitated. She said so. He understood, he said. He would find another way. He didn't want her to do anything she wasn't comfortable with. He just wanted her to know he trusted her completely. That she was the only person in the world he would have asked. And here's the question that was floating just below the surface of everything. The question she hadn't let herself fully form yet. If someone were lying to you about who they were, really lying, systematically, over months, would it feel different from this? She didn't answer it. Not yet. Not out loud. She sent the $4,800. Because the alternative was admitting something she wasn't ready to admit. And because she had already sent the $1,200. And the $1,200 couldn't be a mistake, because if it was a mistake, then everything else was a mistake too. And that was a thought she couldn't hold. The compliance issue was never resolved. That became clear over the next several weeks. The story changed shape, subtly, but always in ways that made sense if you wanted them to. His bank had escalated the freeze. There was a legal dispute with the client. His son had had a health scare in Canada, and Daniel had had to send money there, and now he was stretched thin. She sent $3,000 in September. She sent $6,500 in October. Each time, she told herself it was the last time. Each time, there was a new complication. And each time, he was kind. He was present. He was grateful. He called her Maggie. He asked about her garden, her neighbor Carol, whether the tomatoes had come in this year. The tomatoes had come in beautifully, she told him. He said he wished he could taste one. November came. He needed $18,000. He said it plainly. He said the project was in crisis. He said this was the last time. He said when he came home, and he was coming home, he promised. The project would be finished by January. He would pay back every cent. With interest. He said he had already started planning their first dinner together. She opened her banking app. She looked at the balance. She had sent him $15,500 already. She hadn't added it up until that moment. She sat at her kitchen table for a long time. She opened Messenger. She typed slowly. She asked him things she had never let herself ask. Why had the compliance issue never been resolved? Why had she never been able to reach him on the phone, only through chat? Why had every video call been frozen or dropped? Why had he never been able to send proof of anything? Not the contract, not his bank statement, not even a photo with her name on a piece of paper. He answered every question, calmly, reasonably. He'd explained everything. He said he understood why she was worried. He said he would be worried too. He said her caution showed what a strong woman she was. And that was one of the reasons he had fallen for her. Then he asked if she was really doubting him after everything they had shared. She typed, "Are you really who you say you are?" He said, "Maggie, you know who I am. You've known for months." She believed him, or she needed to believe him. She's not sure anymore which one it was. She sent $18,000. 3 days after that transfer, something changed. She sent a message in the morning. He didn't reply. She sent another one in the afternoon. Nothing. She called. There was no answer. She sent a final message at 11 o'clock at night. Just his name. Just Daniel. Nothing. She sat at the kitchen table and opened her banking app. Her hands were gripping her phone so tight the knuckles had gone pale. She could see the transfers listed in a column. The numbers: 1,200, 4,800, 3,000, 6,500, 18,000, and one more from 2 weeks earlier, 21,000, for something she had told herself was the very last time. Her breathing changed. She put the phone face down on the table. She picked it up again. She looked at the current balance: 7,820. She had started the year with 74,500. She set the phone down very carefully on the table, like it might break. She called her son the next morning. She told him, as plainly as she could. He went quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Mom, why didn't you tell me?" And that was its own kind of loss. Not just the money, not just the 8 months of conversation that had turned out to be performance, but the answer to his question, why hadn't she told anyone? Because it had felt like something private, something hers. Because when you're 61 and living alone in a quiet house, and someone wants to know about your tomatoes and remembers that your husband called you Maggie, you don't want to share that with anyone. You want to hold it carefully and not let anyone tell you what it is. She reported it to the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center. They told her, kindly, that this type of fraud was extremely common, that the perpetrators were usually overseas, that recovery of funds was unlikely. She has not recovered the money. She has 7,820 in savings now. Her pension still comes in every month. The house is still paid off. She will be okay in the narrow financial sense. She will not have the cushion she spent 30 years building, the thing that meant she would never have to ask anyone for anything. She never heard from Daniel again. There was no Daniel. Here's what she says now when she talks about it. She says she doesn't think of herself as naive. She doesn't think of herself as desperate. She thinks of herself as someone who wanted connection, and found what felt like connection, and made decisions she thought were reasonable one at a time. She says the cruelty of it isn't just the money, it's the intimacy. Whoever was on the other side of those messages had learned how to listen, had learned to ask the right questions, had constructed, carefully and deliberately, the exact shape of what she needed. She says the loneliness was real. Her feelings were real. The person she described to her neighbor Carol, the person she told her daughter about in a careful, hedged way, that person was a fiction built from a real ache. She says she wishes she had asked the question earlier, the question she finally asked in November, the one he answered so smoothly. She wishes she had asked it in March, in April, in May. She wishes she had slowed down at the 40-second video call and thought harder about what she was seeing. She says, "I knew somewhere. I think I knew for a long time. But knowing and being willing to know are not the same thing." Romance scams cost Americans over $1.3 billion in a single year, according to the Federal Trade Commission. The majority of victims are over 50. The majority had never been scammed before. The majority described the relationship as the most emotionally significant connection they had made in years. This is not a story about foolishness. It is a story about how loneliness is a vulnerability, how patience and kindness, deployed deliberately, can bypass years of good judgment, how the need to believe in something real can be turned into a mechanism. The people who run these operations are professionals. They are organized. They study their targets. They know what grief looks like, what isolation looks like, what hope looks like. They build the relationship carefully and they take the money slowly. And by the time the numbers are too large to explain away, the emotional investment is too large to abandon. If you think this could never happen to you, this is exactly how it begins. There are things you can do. If someone you've never met in person asks you for money, for any reason, at any time, No matter how long you've known them online, stop. Do not send anything until you have spoken about it with someone you trust in real life. A family member, a friend, anyone. If every attempt at a video call fails, or freezes, or drops, that is a pattern. Real people can video call. Push for it. Push past the excuses. If someone online seems to know exactly what you need to hear, exactly when you need to hear it, slow down. Kindness can be studied. Warmth can be manufactured. The right question at the right moment is a technique before it is a feeling. Tell someone. That is the single most effective protection. Not because you need permission to have feelings, but because isolation is the environment this works in. Scans like this survive in the space between what we feel and what we say out loud. Margaret talks about it openly now. She says it is strange, being the person who tells the story instead of the person it happens to. She says she hopes it helps someone. She went out to her garden last spring. The tomatoes came in again, just like they always do. She told Carol about them on Thursday, over coffee. She was fine. She is fine. She just wants you to be careful. The loneliness was real. That's how it works.